partnership only works if it goes both ways and you get equal effort from both sides. If it is seen as completely transactional and just sign off and, how much am I getting paid, it will never work. There is a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes from both sides in these partnerships. I don't do anything short term, whether it's in business, most of these partnerships are at least a year long. Long haul works better, and I think as a consumer there is more validity to it. It's not just slapping their name on something for a month and then on to the next brand.
Welcome back to another episode of the Wibs podcast. Today we sit down with Tammy Green, the founder of Prene, the cult accessories brand that went from her parents' garage to the shelves of iconic retailers like David Jones and The Iconic. Tammy shares how she built Prene from scratch at just 20 years old, turning a simple neoprene bag concept into an 8-figure business. We dive into her journey of hiding her identity at the start to be taken seriously, facing burnout and anxiety while scaling her brand, and learning to back herself every step of the way. It's an unfiltered episode, and it's a super inspiring conversation about resilience, self-belief, and what it takes to turn a bold idea into a household name at just 20 years old. Welcome to the podcast, Tammy Green.
Hi, I'm Natasha.
And I'm Penny.
And welcome back to the Wibs. Today we have the wonderful Tammy from Prene Bags. Am I saying that correctly?
That is correct.
And I've been a huge lover of your brand for many years. So I'm feeling very, very excited to just be able to ask a million questions. The first question I want to start off with though is, how did you start? How did you think of it? How?
That's a very good question to start off with. It is a little bit loaded. To take you right back to the beginning, I've always been an extremely creative person and I've always been extremely entrepreneurial. And some of my fondest memories growing up were doing woodwork with my grandpa in his garage, or sewing lessons, or building cubby houses. And then entering into my teenage years, as long as alongside working the regular sort of jobs like the froyo shop or retail or nannying, I always had side projects and side businesses. And probably the most iconic one was making and selling Justin Bieber t-shirts. At the peak of his fame, I will say he's probably back up there at the moment. He's having a bit of a resurgence, but I made this t-shirt, I put it on Tumblr, it went viral, and I sold thousands of these. So that was my first little taste into entrepreneurship. As well, I used to upcycle vintage and designer clothing that I'd buy from op shops or markets, sell it on eBay for a profit. I'd buy designer dresses and rent them out. So I was always doing something, and I'm very fortunate to have grown up with a very entrepreneurial father who kind of instilled that in me. So Prene really started as another one of those side projects and one of those somethings. And I like to say it was a bit of a happy accident. At the time, I was studying and failing my business entrepreneurship degree at uni, which is ironic.
You just spoke about all these things that you've done and you were failing that. Yeah.
Do you know what? I don't have a mathematical mind. I could not pass accounting or statistics. I was failing everything. But what I did get out of this course was the transit time to and from the CBD every day on the train and on the tram. And something that I noticed was these beautiful women carrying these beautiful tote bags that were leather or designer. And where would they go? On the floor, on the public transport floor, on the public bathroom floor, and I could just not comprehend spending so much money on a bag that gets dirty and filthy and you can't wash it. And then what do you do with it? You pick it up and you carry it and it all goes on you. And I just thought that was yucky and weird, and there weren't a lot of tote bags on the market at the time that were sort of mid-tier, affordable, practical, and also chic. I was very much inspired by an international androgynous clothing designer who was using a lot of neoprene in his clothing garments. Now, neoprene is wetsuit material, which is washable, it's spongy, but I also thought it was really cool and really different. So I wanted to play around with that material. And going back to me always making things and doing sewing lessons and being crafty, I ended up making a sample of a tote bag that I gave to my mum in the end, and she ended up carrying it out to dinner one night, and 5 people stopped her in the street and they said, where did you get that? Where did you get that bag? And that's when the little spark went off in my head and I thought, okay, this obviously is something different. There's something there. I went about sourcing a manufacturer, which was a total gamble. I hadn't really mass-produced a product before. I believe the minimum order quantity was 600 or 700 units. And I just thought, what am I going to do with these? They will last me a lifetime. But I took the gamble. I took the risk. I was living at home at the time. I had so many other jobs. I had savings. I didn't have a mortgage to pay or a family to support. So it wasn't a huge risk for me. It just felt like go for it. Yeah. And that's what I did. I built the Instagram myself, the website myself, did all the photos, the marketing. I set these bags up on pre-order. And in 1 month, I had sold all of them, sight unseen. And it just spiraled from there. I will say this was at a time when Instagram was a little more friendly to businesses and the algorithm was kinder and you could get a lot more eyes on your product and on your page. But in the course of the year after that, I dropped out of uni. I devoted my full attention to Prene and it became a fully fledged business and I haven't looked back since.
So funny. Dropped out of entrepreneurship course to be an entrepreneur. That's I find that really, really interesting. And how did you come up with, like, I get where the name comes from now that you kind of spoke about it, got it. But how did you do all of that? It sounds like it was all on your own, coming up with the name, the branding, that regardless of, I respect what you're saying about Instagram. It was, a different time at one stage. However, it still wasn't easy. Like, it still wasn't, if it was, everyone would have done it, right? Absolutely. So how did you, to be able to sell out of your pre-order within the first month is a huge feat. How did that happen?
It wasn't easy and I absolutely fumbled my way through. I will always say I am eternally grateful to my dad who guided me along a lot of this journey and he has a lot of business experience. So setting up the back end together with some guidance was very helpful. If I was doing it completely on my own, I probably would have crumbled and burned. But really where my strong suits are in that creative side of the business and in the marketing and knowing how to pitch and style and get it seen on the right people and promote it in the right way. So I feel like it was the best of both worlds coming into one where I had the support of someone who has actual experience and I could lean on and rely on. And then I could also play to my own strengths. But I will always say it's 50% luck and 50% hard work. I mean, I worked absolutely night and day around the clock. Talking about this now, it sounds very glamorous. You sell out in a month. It was so stressful. I mean, we were running this business from my bedroom, from the family garage. The stock hadn't arrived on time. It was nearly Christmas. We were packing night and day, my mom and dad and I. We were hand delivering these orders, making sure people got them in time for Christmas. And then what do you do after that? You've sold out, you've got demand. It's a whole other problem, a good problem to have, but in the early days, we used to have fights break out over these wait lists and who is going to get their Prene bag first. So there are pros and cons to growing very quickly, but the only way out is through. And you just have to take each day as it comes and you learn as you go. And that's something you cannot be taught at uni or at school or from a textbook.
I think it's amazing though the way the brand has grown. I remember when Prene came out and it was on everyone's arm. Like I feel like everyone in my life had the little zip bag that went like crossbody bag over as well as the tote as well for gym. But how do you think the brand and the range has evolved, from then to now? Like what are we doing differently today with Prene?
Yeah, I mean, we still stick to our same core values. We fuse fashion and function, and Prene is very utilitarian. It has to serve a purpose. If it looks really beautiful, but if it doesn't hold up or you can't wash it or it starts to bubble or fall apart, it's not going to work. That is not the brand that we have built. People come to us for a reason and they want a versatile product that can be used for a gym bag, a baby bag, a work bag, a mum bag, their travel carry-on, and anywhere and everything in between. If it does not have that functionality, we don't include it. We don't buy into trends or fads for the sake of it, just to pump something out. So I'm always designing products with our community in mind. I think about our best customer. Is this going to fit into their lifestyle, or am I just being selfish here because I want to release this bag? So that's what I'm always thinking about. But still, our number one bestseller is the first product we ever released, which is the Brighton bag. And that's nearly 10 years old, and it has not dated. And I think, again, it just goes back to a very classic style. I like to say it's the most inoffensive gift you could give someone, because guaranteed the recipient will love it. I mean, it's such a good shape and size. For those who aren't familiar with it, it has signature black and white rope handles, which gave it a little bit something different at the time, and they've become quite synonymous with our brand. But it's just such a good size. It's such a good price point. In 10 years, the price hasn't changed. It's under $100, even though it costs us twice as much to produce it. But that's what we are, function, affordable, mid-tier, still really stylish and chic, but simple, timeless. The bags that still looked good 10 years ago are still absolutely wearable and carryable today.
I think the thing that stood out for me then was the 10 years. You've had this brand for 10 years, and it's still everyone knows that brand. It's such a well-known brand. You've just built it and kept it relevant for 10 years. I remember I was even talking to my mum, and she's like, "Oh, what are you doing this week?" And I was like, "Oh, we're interviewing the founder of Prene Bags." And I was like, "Oh my God, are you serious?" Like everyone, it's such a cool, you've just created such a cool brand. And I guess, when a lot of people listening, everyone wants to get into business, everyone wants to start a business, and, with social media, TikTok, and all these new things that have happened, especially in the last decade since you started, how have you been able to remain relevant within this brand and keep this brand, like you said, the bestseller has been the bestseller for 10 years. That's almost unheard of, in the way that most brands have to move. How do you feel like you've been able to keep relevant throughout those 10 years for the brand?
Yeah, I mean, the fashion industry is vicious, absolutely. It is no easy feat surviving for 10 years, so I will say I am very proud of myself for that. And I think it does go back to just sticking back to our core design values, but also having really strong values as a business owner, including the people that we work with or the team that comes on board. If they don't align with my values, it is not going to work. And I am very strict about that. People kind of interpret this in two different ways, but I will not do anything for $1, which most businesses will do. I don't. I mean, if it doesn't fit in with, the greater picture of my life or what I really agree with or believe in, then I will happily say no. And 10 years later, I am at that phase where in the early days, I was so naive and I would do everything and say yes to everything, and maybe they weren't aligned and maybe they weren't for the greater good of the business. Whereas now, I'm a little bit more cynical. I'm a little bit more mature. I do say no to a lot of things. And I just make sure, again, always we are coming back to our community. Community is number one. But also it's really important to innovate. I mean, I can't just sell one bag for 10 years and, what would I do? It would be done and dusted by now. So I'm always exploring new products, new materials. Last year we released luggage actually, which felt like a natural progression for the brand. A lot of people would buy our bags as carry-on products. So we thought, let's build out the full set for them. Things like that make sense, but always innovating while still staying in line with our values and with our community. So I can't be selfish and just do things because a stakeholder wants me to release that. I need to be quite strict and firm. And when I stick to that, it works. It's very simple.
Yeah, and I think that, speaking to your relevancy and what you've been able to do and evolve, you've had some incredible partnerships as well. There's been what you've done with Beck Judd, with Chloe, with, Tennis Australia. Talk to us about how some of these collaborations and partnerships have come to be, because I think, from the outside, people seeing you working with these incredible influencers and brands, it seems almost unattainable to someone starting out from their garage, but you've been able to do it all. So how do some of these, big partnerships come to life?
Absolutely. I mean, I like to say if I can do it, anyone can do it, because the Australian Open actually reached out to me, and that was mind-blowing. Growing up in Melbourne, the Australian Open is the absolute pinnacle of the year. The city comes alive. I've always grown up playing tennis. I just love it. So that was an honor to even be recognized or acknowledged by them. And it just shows that you can be a small business and have a small team and work with these larger companies and larger brands, and it can be successful. And it was successful. We designed a bag after working together for a year, and it was gifted to all players and sold at the merchandise store, and it sold out on the very first day. So that was almost vindication, like, ooh, I made it. Yeah. You know, like this is really cool. It's so exciting. And the same thing with Beck Judd. I mean, that was an absolute cold call. I think I probably emailed her manager 5 or 10 times before I got a response. And the reason I got a response is because I told the story. You know, I'm a young woman. I'm doing this business on my own. I've always looked up to Beck, admired her, and they kind of were like, wow, we had no idea. So I think being really honest and vulnerable in circumstances can actually get you a really long way, and telling your story and sharing more about it. It's not just a transactional deal. And Rebecca is absolutely incredible. To me, she is the epitome of the ultimate Prene customer. She's a mother of 4. She's an entrepreneur. She's incredibly active. She does all the sports. You know, she's gorgeous. She's transparent. I love this year that she's really come out and kind of pulled back the filter on, you know, beauty treatments and other things going on in the world. So she felt like the absolute right alignment, and she was just a dream to work with. So we created the Beck bag together, sold incredibly well. And then a year later, we increased that to a 10-piece collection. And I'm actually very excited to announce that we are working with Rebecca again, coming up to our 10-year anniversary. And it just felt so organic, such a full circle moment. So she is coming on board as the face of our new collection next month, the Era bag, which makes total sense and something that's quite innovative as well. So super excited about sharing that. She's still as easy to work with as she was back then. She's a seasoned pro. And again, that just comes back to aligned values, working with people who are on the same page as you.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting, like when you speak to your core values and your team and whatnot, and how you include partners as part of that, and make sure that you hold the same standards that you do internally, externally as well. Because obviously it also creates that loyalty. Like with partnerships, you see a lot of them, especially with influencers or people of influence, you see it become quite transactional and quite volume-based. There's so many, and there's this big argument, do influencers work anymore, and all of these bits and pieces that are kind of going around, which I totally respect. But from what you're saying, it sounds as if, you know, it's not so much influencers and influence, it's partners, and finding that right partner. And naturally someone like Beck holds those values that you always have, so you guys can work really seamlessly together, which I think is really exciting. That's really exciting, 10 years in business, and to be able to launch with such an incredible partner, with just 2 people working together on something like this, is just so exciting to hear. When it came to choosing, say, her in particular, was there like a list of people that you kind of like to work with, or was she always like your person that you wanted to work with?
She's just someone who has always stuck out with me. And going back to the idea of partners, a partnership only works if it goes both ways and you get equal effort from both sides. So if it is seen as completely transactional and just sign off and, you know, how much am I getting paid, it will never work. There is a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes from both sides in these partnerships, and I don't do anything short term, you know, whether it's in business. Most of these partnerships are at least a year long. I've been in a relationship for 10 years. I still drive the same car I bought 10 years ago when I got my license. So long haul works better, and I think as a consumer there is more validity to it. It's not just slapping their name on something for a month and then on to the next brand. And that's what I see happen a lot with influencers these days. Where's the loyalty? I mean, they promote one, I don't know, let's say hair product yesterday, and then today they're promoting another one, and you see these comments, hang on a second, which was the product you said were? I'm a little bit confused. So we're very careful about building these long-term contracts in place as well, and kind of building more of an ambassador rather than just a short fleeting whim type of project. It just doesn't work in the same way. And I think, yeah, the influencer landscape is really changing. Consumers can see right through paid posts most of the time. But for Beck, it fits, you know. She's been with the brand for so many years now. It just makes sense.
And I actually really love the alignment with what you said earlier about, like, say, her new podcast with Vanish and how she's out there just being incredibly, almost showing us a bit of a different side to the beautiful, glamorous person that we've always known, showing that, you know, background side of, hey, I do this and I do this, to align yourself with somebody who is being very transparent about what they do, especially with how strong you are on your core values and how ethical that you guys are and everything that you do, I think is actually such a really nice alignment for both of you when you look into this partnership versus what you said around the influencers, which I couldn't agree with more. I'm hearing more and more business owners really struggling with what to do when it comes to hiring influencers or not, because like you said earlier, Instagram's changed. These things have changed. So people go into this, but I think that's an excellent tip and an excellent takeaway, which is look for someone that you can grow a partnership with. An ambassador versus an influencer, I think, is something a really nice takeaway.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think especially if you didn't align with her values and then she came out and released a podcast and it wasn't in line with, you know, your brand and who you are and what you're doing, you're putting her face to the brand. And if it was just to get, you know, clicks and likes and views and, you know, and shares on a post because she's obviously got this prolific following and community, it would have unraveled there, instead of that, you know, really organic relationship that you're able to build. But I think one thing I did want to ask you about, you know, obviously starting the brand in, was it 2015? Yes. So starting it in 2015 to now, obviously social media has changed a lot. The direction of how you be able to grow a business has changed a lot. What do you think is the biggest difference in terms of your strategy when it comes to social media now? Because that was obviously a base for you in the beginning.
Absolutely. I mean, it feels like the 10th year is year one all over again. I feel like an absolute novice. I am relearning and unlearning and taking on new information and re-strategizing every day. What used to work back then does not work now. So it feels like going back to the drawing board and just trying a bunch of different things. So growing the business in the beginning, we were very reliant on a constant flow of influencer promotion, which, as I just said, doesn't work in the same way that it used to. People see right through it. We focus more now on the long-term partnerships. But I think what has been most effective is really highlighting our community and putting our community at the forefront. While there is always a time and place for the beautiful, polished model or talent or influencer, people also just want to see people just like them, real people. We have such an incredible community, and even team members that work with me, just profiling them has seen our sales and engagement and activity really increase, which I think is just so funny. I mean, it's the simplest things that are the most effective. In the early days, and a lot of brands now, they will launch and they will be founder facing. I didn't do that because I was never taken seriously as a young woman, which I kind of regret because I feel like, again, that would have kind of broken down that wall, opened up the community further. But that is really what we are focusing on now, which has been really incredible, even just to meet really long-standing customers, community members, how Prene has changed their life. And it's just sincere. It's not so polished. It's a little bit more scrappy. Before, it was all about looking really beautiful and perfect and, you know, neat graphics, all of that. Again, it's out the window. So we're trying new things all the time. But I think my goal would be if our community could just be our ongoing spokesperson, or they become the influencer. I think that's fantastic. You know, it's evergreen, it's long-standing, and there's no limit to it.
Yeah, that's so interesting what you say there. I think that's definitely the thing I've noticed in a shift in the way that we produce content now, from 2015 being like this very like polished, you know, white background, flat lay aesthetic to now. Yeah. Everything being like so much more organic and you know, wanting to kind of really know the person behind the brand. But I want to touch on something that you said around, you know, not being taken seriously as a young woman in business. And there's a story there around using a fake name at the very start of your business. To talk to us about what that was like.
I know I was not taken seriously as a young woman when I started. I mean, being 19, 20, I mean, think about you at that age. You go through so much as a young woman, physically, emotionally, mentally. You're going through so many changes, and don't even get me started on the hormones. I mean, I have endo, so my hormones were just absolutely crazy. Alongside all of that, running a business where I had absolutely no idea what I was doing and doing it all, I would be on the phone. I'm the one on the phone speaking to stakeholders and partners and retailers, and I would get absolutely torn down. They would hear my voice and say, "Oh, can you put your boss on? Or can you put someone more senior on? Or can I speak to someone else? Can you ask permission to speak to someone else?" And I feel really sad for myself back then because I just did not have the self-confidence to defend myself, to stand up for myself or say, "Actually, you are speaking to the owner of Prene. How may I help you?" And I kind of became a little bit of a hermit and I hid away from it all and I didn't want to speak to people on the phone anymore. I would only communicate on email, fake name, again, not be founder-facing at all, not share my story, which is really sad, but you do learn from it and you do grow. And I've grown so much from my business, even 5 years ago to 10 years ago. I'm so much more confident. I just wish I had more of a backbone, whereas I've learnt now if you do speak up, I don't want to, say argue with people. Sometimes it's absolutely not worth the argument, but just because they're the bigger fish or, the bigger company or the bigger name, it doesn't always mean that they're right. And they will respect you more if you do speak up, if you do say things. I always say everything is negotiable, which is something I've learned along the journey. But 2015 Tammy was very quiet, very meek, and it was not the ideal environment for me to prosper. Whereas just growing up, things have changed and, I am grateful for that experience because it's made me stronger and who I am today. But sad.
That's a lot. No, it is. And when you describe that, you get taken back to yourself, like us, at that age. And I couldn't agree with you more. It's like that nervousness or not backing yourself, or I've spoken about it a lot with a lot of people that I've worked with, where it's very rare that I'll have a woman come and ask for a pay rise. Very rare. Men are more likely, and there's been studies on this, that they're more likely to say, "Look, give me the role and I'll prove it." Whereas women are more likely to be like, "How can I get the role? How can I prove myself to get the role?" And we kind of back ourselves before we go into it. And it's very similar. And it is. I think age does give you a piece of that, but the other part is voices like yours that share that. Because I think, if I had a voice like yours at 19, 20 and I was in that position where I'm like, "Hey, wait a minute, I've had someone say that to me. I've had someone say that to me. You've done it, you had that, and this is your business. Okay, maybe I can say, hey, look, I am the owner." And see what happens, and kind of try and make your way through, because it is so relatable, so overwhelming, and I just think it's something that I think a lot of women have dealt with, unfortunately, and still deal with today. I'm sure, regardless of your successful business, I'm sure that you'd still get it to this day in different ways. You just have different ways of dealing with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think women are sadly inherently people pleasers. I'm an only child, I'm introverted. It's always kind of been in my nature. I apologize for things I don't need to apologize for. So it was kind of I felt it was kind of like someone was taking advantage of this sort of, not flaw in me, but just like part of my personality, and then really chipped away at my confidence.
But I like the fact that you can be a vulnerable leader as well, because you've obviously built a successful business over 10 years, being, as you described, introverted, and, there is power in that. There is power in that. Just because you weren't the loudest voice in the room 10 years ago doesn't mean that you're not able to see success. So I think that's really important. One thing that I want to know from you is, building a business is hard, incredibly hard. How do you find balance? How do you, burnout is a huge topic that a lot of people speak to. How do you find balance in growing such a successful business over those 10 years?
Yeah, I feel like balance is a dirty word. I'm not sure that it exists. I will say I definitely had my rock bottom moment a few years ago where I was doing absolutely everything. I was in fight or flight, working 24 hours a day, thinking about Prene night and day, disregarding my health and my partner and my family and my friends, and I just crashed and burned, which is an awful place to be, but it is a place where you grow from. And it forced me to just stop. For the first time in many years, I just stopped. I tapped out for a little while. I took a step back. I reprioritized what was important to me in my life. And we actually ended up restructuring the team and restructuring my role in the business. Whereas before I was doing a little bit of everything, now I am the creative director. So I really just focus on design and marketing, which is my strong suit and I love. And I have to say I am happy. I'm so happy about that. And again, talking about growing up in your 20s and so much changing, it just puts life into perspective. I mean, I've had loved ones that are no longer here with us anymore. And I think, wow, I have this successful business and I have money in the bank, but I have nothing else. And let me tell you something, you certainly cannot bring your Prene bag with you when you leave this world, and you can't bring the money with you. So I thought, what on earth am I doing this for? There is so much more to life. Prene is not my only personality. I am a person outside of that. I have so many incredible people outside of that. And that is really what is most important. So I just don't sweat the small stuff anymore. You know, if a manufacturer sews on the incorrect button or if someone doesn't get their bag on time, it just doesn't matter. It's not brain surgery. It's not the end of the world. I think it's really funny because I've now been doing this for so long. That's my mindset. Whereas a lot of my team members, they're like family. They treat Prene like it's their own. And I'm the ones kind of, you know, reassuring them like, don't worry about it. I love that you care so much, but it's really not the end of the world. So I think just being realistic. I'm very fortunate to be in a position 10 years later where I can work my own hours and it is flexible. And I always say I'm like a dog. The happiest thing I can do is go for a walk every day. 2 walks. Like nothing makes me happier than fresh air, sunshine, music, and a podcast. And no matter what has happened that day, I will come back from that walk a different person, a better person. Even just taking the weekend off, I always come up with the best ideas and I'm refreshed. And it's just about establishing what is important to you in life. Of course, channeling your ambition. I'm incredibly ambitious, but it's not the be-all and end-all. And I'm very fortunate. I think the biggest change for me has actually just been having a fantastic team. You cannot do it alone.
Yeah, that is something I really agree with. I think it's, you know, as you start to grow and build out your business, I think there's this, I guess, like this light shone on like the founders and like doing it all alone and being able to build it. But talk to us about your team. Like, what are they like? Like, who are you working with? Like, how do they balance you out?
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to say that we are a small business that does big things, and any sort of stakeholder we speak to assumes I have a team of 20, 30, 40 people. I don't. I have a very small team that I can count on my hands. I have 5 internal team members. I have myself, I have a CFO, a general manager, and then 2 full-time virtual assistants. And our whole team is pretty much women. A lot of them are mums as well, which is fantastic because it gives them the freedom to work from home and do mum life. But they are incredible. I feel like opposites attract. For example, our general manager, we're so similar in so many ways, but so different. Whereas I've said I'm quite introverted, she's not. So she loves picking up the phone and, you know, presenting to people and doing all of that. And she's so driven and ambitious and she wants to get that sale over the line, which is absolutely incredible. Whereas, you know, our other team members, they are just absolutely whizzes at admin. You know, they learn things. They can do anything tech related. They're always coming up with ideas. It's completely collaborative. So we work very closely together. And our CFO is actually my dad. You know, he's the numbers man. Where I fail in statistics and all of that, that's his jam. So I could not do that without him. And there's probably no one I would trust.
Well, it's family. Him. Like I think that's I think you've absolutely nailed that finance role, because the issues that I hear the most are with the person in finance, whether it's from different things or there's like sneaky things going on, or they're just not doing it they don't have the care or level of attention that you need. Having your dad doing that is just like the ultimate goal. That is perfect.
Yeah, no, he's definitely been an incredible mentor to me and I'm just so grateful. And then alongside those 5 people, we probably have another 5 to 10 contractors that are absolutely creative geniuses when we do shoots or content or styling. And again, these are all women. They work for themselves. And again, we share that same sort of drive and ambition and hustle. You know, we want to get things done. We want the best outcome for everyone. So that's what I have found has been the biggest change for me. You can't do it all on your own forever, and just aligning with the right people. It's not easy. It's taken a long journey to find these right people. But now I want to hold on to them for dear life.
Yeah, the theme, I think a theme that's kind of throughout everything you've said is that whole quality over quantity piece. And that's like evident in everything that you've said, whether it's about the brand or your team or the people that you partner with. Every aspect of what you've spoken about is the importance of quality, which I think is really, really, really easy to kind of especially now with just how much we have access to and all the information that we have access to, it is really easy to go down that volume, quality, just hire people, keep growing, like what you said, I actually think a small team is so much more of a safe flex than a large team, because I think that your ability to do more with less and be able to really spoil those people and help those people grow and build something really special that, like what you said, like a really tight-knit group that really genuinely care. I think that speaks more volumes than a big team of people trying to know each other's names. Like regardless of the size of business, your ability to do it with a smaller team I think is awesome.
I agree. We work with so many stakeholders and big companies and have these massive teams and they don't communicate with each other. Things go around and around and around in circles, whereas we have this small team that's nimble and proactive and will execute something in 24 hours that takes a bigger team, 3 months to do. So yeah, there's definitely a beauty to it, and I think it's really special. I think there's this misconception that a big team means greater success, but to me, more people, more problems, more overheads, longer. There's a lot to consider.
And also choosing like what your superpower is, like you've said, creative direction and that piece. So a lot of people get into building big teams, but people management isn't necessarily something that they really enjoy or are good at. So they build these big teams, they've got all these people around them, and all of a sudden they're like, my whole day is people management, regardless of whether they've got a general manager or not. There's still an element of people management when you've got that. So I think you've been able to really align it with what you're good at, which I think is cool. I wanted to ask about, you said something earlier about like the founder-led content. That's very topical at the moment about, I feel like everyone feels like if they've got a business, they have to be posting, have to be founder-led. How do you feel about that, and how do you feel like that's kind of changed the way that you produce content?
Yeah, I think there are definitely pros and cons to it. Admittedly, I'm not particularly avid on social media. I sort of dip in and out. I love it. It's part of my job, but sometimes I find it very draining and very toxic. And producing content really is a full-time job. And if it's taking me away from other important things in the business, it does not become a priority for me. But I see these other incredible businesses that are founder-facing and, they've just picked up their phone, they're talking to camera on selfie. It's fast and loose and it's really effective, and that works for them. Then I see the more polished sort of founder content where it's a sit down and, it's very beautifully set up and filmed, and that can work really well. It depends on your brand. I've kind of pulled back from the content side of things with Prene myself the last couple of months because I really want to highlight our community more. But that being said, when we've had, viral videos of success, it's just me talking to camera, telling a story, how I built my business, or a little tip. So it's funny how effective it can be. But yeah, you just really have to keep your finger on the pulse in TikTok in particular. It moves so quickly. Trends change so quickly, and stories that used to be so unique are now relatively common. So yeah, it's hard to stand out, I would say.
It's so true, and it's like that content piece of where you can get really distracted by it as well. And I love that you mentioned that, because I feel the same way, where it's kind of like you get this like thing where it's like you've got to post, but then like it's distracting you from the business you're building as well. Like that's not necessarily what you've been put on here to do, to just post. So I love that you make that kind of okay. It's like, it's okay. And you still, like I've seen your social media, I've seen your TikTok, like you still give people a real glimpse of who you are, which I think is important as well for your community to kind of feel like they get to know you as well, which I think is really, really cool. One kind of last question that we have, which you kind of touched on a little bit, but I believe it's one of the most important questions because it helps 19-year-old Tammy. But essentially it is, what advice would you give your fresh out of high school self, knowing everything that you know now and you've experienced in the last, say, decade?
I would say put in the work, because nothing good comes easy. As you said before, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. Fake it till you make it. You know, if you don't have that confidence, just pretend you do. You walk into that room like you own it. If you have a startup business, you act like it's already a $10 million business. If you have that voice, find it, use it. You know, I think that if you're not using AI in this day and age, and if you're not kind of simplifying your workload and using the resources that you have at your fingertips, you're already falling behind. I guess that's not really relevant to 19-year-old me at the time, but to any 19-year-olds now, the world is changing so rapidly. I think it's fascinating that we are this generation that has experienced life before AI and after AI. And I mean, I use it for absolutely everything. So do as much as you can on your own to learn, but I mean, use the resources that you have available. When I started my business, everything was incredibly manual. It had graphic designer and a copywriter and this and that. And if you wanted to learn something, you had to read a book. So it's all changing. So I think embrace that, embrace technology as it changes. But the biggest thing is, trust your gut, stick to your values. If you have a very strong core values and goals and ambition, channel it wisely, but don't give up the rest of your life outside of work because of it, and you'll go far.
Wow, there's a lot. Like I think it's unreal, Tammy. I think it's like I'm listening to you, I'm just like check. Like it's unreal. It's unreal advice. I think one of the most unique pieces of advice then was that AI piece, which I know you said wasn't relevant to you at 19, but technically it is, because at 19, when you were 19, you used what you had. You jumped on the latest trend, right? Or the latest tech, let's call it, which was Instagram at the time. Like you did that. You were like, okay, cool. What's this thing that I can use to my thing that somebody a decade older than me might not know as well? Like I don't know TikTok as well as a 19-year-old. Like I wish, but I don't, because I'm not growing up in it. So I actually think that's incredible advice is, you know, they have the upper hand as a younger generation than the older generations, because we're learning a little bit like, oh, okay, the TikTok and all of those bits and pieces, like, we're kind of learning it as we go, but they've grown up on it. So they do have that upper hand that maybe we don't right now.
It's the resourcefulness of it all.
Yeah, like, I love that.
Yeah, we beam you out. Tammy, thank you so much for your time today. Honestly, it's been an incredible interview. I've learned a lot personally, you know, on how you've grown and built this business. But for people listening, where can they find you? How can they learn more about you? How can they support you?
Thank you so much for having me. This has been such a fun, seamless chat. You can find me, Tammy _Green on Instagram and TikTok, and Prene Bags, Prene Bags everywhere. Instagram, TikTok, prenebags.com.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for listening. We will be back in your ears in 2 weeks' time.
See you then.
Bye.